This is the Linksys for Me Too podcast series with Gregor Ross and Andy Wallace. So welcome to the From Me Too podcast. I'm here with my co-founder Gregor Ross.
Hi, Andy.
And Judith O'Leary.
Hi, Andy.
And Judith O'Leary is the managing director for Represent Communications, and or was, as the case may be. We're going to hear a bit more from Judith. Just to tell you a bit more about the From Me Too podcast, we like to understand the journey of the business leaders that we're talking to, what the good, the bad and ugly of that, I suppose, and to see how perhaps your upbringing or your early experiences shaped your career, and hear what you're doing now, if that's okay, Judith.
Sounds good.
So I'll take it away. Good to meet you, Judith.
Lovely to meet you, Gregor.
And in terms, what we like to do at the start is just go back. So if you're okay talking about your background and maybe the early roles and how that's informed everything that's went from then.
Yeah, absolutely. My background, I grew up on a farm in rural Ireland of one of seven, eldest daughter. Very much that has shaped my entrepreneurial spirit and my resilience throughout my life, without a doubt. Farming is one of those industries that resilience is tested every single day. Agility also. How do you fix something? How do you adapt? How do you start with a day and realize that it's all gone to pot and you need to go somewhere else? And I saw that just was part of my life at that early upbringing. So that came forward, I think, and has helped me throughout my career. I went to boarding school for a few years in secondary school, and that again helped me just really learn to get on with lots of different types of people, really to find myself, and that was really helpful for me. But also to sort of stand out in a crowd and understand how you can make friends quite easily, and that really has helped in the comms industry.
And did you enjoy the early years? Do you feel it made you self-sufficient?
Very much self-sufficient. Did I enjoy it? Yeah, it was great childhood when you look back through rose-tinted glasses. Was it so good when you were having we all had a part to play in the farm, so it wasn't sort of sitting reading books. And I look at my friends who say, oh, I had a lovely time in my room reading books all the time. And I'm like, oh, I wasn't really doing that. I was milking cows and looking after calves, and it's not all glamorous. It's not Jeremy Clarkson. It was quite hard work, but that's what was expected. And yeah, we all did it.
Close family?
Very close family, very, very. I miss being in Ireland quite a lot. And my siblings, we probably speak very, very regularly. And when something goes wrong, it's like we all pile in, and that's fantastic. Yeah.
Brilliant.
So a great work ethic, I suppose,
Very
from the
much.
farming community. And you set up O'Leary PR in 2001,
That's correct.
and then you rebranded to Represent Comms in 2017.
That's correct.
So what was the reason for the switch and the rebrand, I suppose? And then also, what drove you to getting into PR, I suppose, and, give us a bit of your background before starting O'Leary.
Well, all good Irish girls are either nurses or they work in the bank or teachers. So my family were very much from the nursing healthcare background, and that's where I was going. So I was sent to England to become a nurse, and I got there and I thought, actually, I don't think I want to be a nurse. And I fell into working for Cambridge University. I worked for St. John's for a lovely man who was the bursar of St. John's. Very strict army background, and he really gave me a great grounding in how I needed to have that real attention to detail. But also, it was a baptism of fire. I came over with a relatively strong Irish accent, and in Cambridge, they had no idea what I was talking about, so I had to really slow down. So I worked there for a long time and I really enjoyed it. And then I moved on to a company called Cambridge Cable, and they were an American company owned by Comcast and then Singapore Telecom. And they were the first company to install cable TV and also a competitor to what was then British Telecom. So they were really entrepreneurial. I worked with a chairman called Hugo Davenport, who worked with Sir Clive Sinclair, really interesting people that had done amazing things and then were going on to do, continued to do amazing things. So Cambridge Cable was an American company, also, as I say, owned by Singapore Telecom. I ended up working for the managing director and the chairman as their executive PA, and I could see firsthand how things were going. It was super fast, decisions were made, really agile company, and they grew and grew and grew. And I naturally developed into a role that was stakeholder engagement. So we were digging up the most beautiful streets in Cambridge and putting, cables underneath. We were dealing with very articulate people who had degrees coming out of their ears, who were fighting this tooth and nail because they didn't want this. This was a bit common. It's not really the progress they were looking for. So really, I learned very quickly to try and adapt the messaging so it was relevant to them and that they could see the benefit rather than just looking at it and face value, which is we don't want, cartoons for kids on our TV. There was lots of other things that cable TV could bring, but also competition when it came to telecommunications. And that was just for consumers, but also for businesses as well. So, and that was a really great start to my career. The managing director at the time was just super young, a Harvard graduate, and there was no you weren't confined in any way. And he promoted me and promoted me. And so in the end, I was head of engagement for most of the south of England, Cambridge, Essex, Harlow, and had a team of 6 by the time I was about 23, which was incredible, really.
And what brought you to Edinburgh? What was the moves that
My
brought you here?
husband.
Yes. Yeah.
So
Good man.
he
Yeah.
worked for Marconi and Hewlett Packard, and then was Scottish and was keen to move back home. So at the time, I was still commuting up and down to Cambridge at the time, which was fine for a few years. But then I realized I needed to make a commitment. I needed to actually start to work up here. So I took a massive demotion, worked for an agency, which was EuroRSCG, and started basically at the bottom again because they didn't really recognize, I suppose, my skills, because it wasn't purely PR, it was more stakeholder. So started as an account manager there, and within 2.5 years, I was managing director of that business in Cambridge, or in Edinburgh, sorry. And we, as part of EuroRSCG, head offices in London, Bristol, Leeds, Manchester, and Edinburgh. So that was fantastic, a really great opportunity to really work with seasoned agency people and see how a big agency works.
So then, you're managing director of that firm. What encouraged you to start O'Leary?
Well, it was really a matter of the children. At that point, I had 3 children under 5. I was traveling to London all the time. I didn't really see them. I felt really torn.
Hmm.
I felt I wasn't really able to give my all to work, and I wasn't giving my all to home. And I just needed to be a bit more flexible in my work. And so I resigned, which was a big, brave move.
Hmm.
Um, and then, sadly, the year after, my mum died, and she was the age of 59. So I'd only stopped work a couple of months when she had died, really. And I felt I needed to get back to work at this point. Saoirse, my youngest, was a year. And I just thought, actually, I do want to start again, and I can do something on my own. And a theme keep going back to in this interview is just making real friends and collaborators, because what you never know what will come from it. And I always have this theory there's no such thing as a wasted meeting.
Hmm.
And one of my ex-colleagues at URCG started working for Kimberly Clark, and they were working on their Kleenex Huggies brands. And they said, "Oh, we've got a new range of nappies for newborns, and we really want somebody who understands mums to work on this piece of work. Do you know anybody?" And she said, "Yes, just the woman who's just a new mum for the 3rd time, is starting her own PR agency. I think she'd be great." So I started working on Huggies, and it seems really old hat now. I'm going back 25 years or 26 years or so. They wanted, instead of parents looking to professionals for advice on how to bring up a baby, they started to adjust and say, look, trust your own instinct. You know your baby best. Mums are the experts. And from that, they wanted someone who could speak in that tone of voice. And that was the first time I really started to understand the power of A, understanding your market, but B, adjusting your tone and messaging, and the power that that had. And Huggies and Pampers were neck and neck. Huggies were the challenger brand, but they really wanted that point of differentiation. So I worked really closely with the team on that, developing those packs, newborn packs, messaging around and dealing with, great magazines like Mother and Baby and Nat Mags and doing a lot in London. And it was fantastic. And did a great job on that. So then they put me on the next stage nappy and the next stage nappy. And then they put me on dry nights and then they put me on little swimmers. And before I knew it, I was working across all of the Huggies brands, like a one-man band in my living room. And I had the best 4 or 5 years. I employed somebody. We were doing really, really well. And then purchasing got involved and said, can you send me your statement of accounts, and can you send me, your resilience plan? And I had none of this because, of course, I was on my own. So that was a big risk for Kimberly Clark as a major brand using somebody on their own. So they went out to pitch, and I knew there was no point. There's no way I could have won that. I just didn't tick the purchasing boxes. So resigned that, and then I had to start building in Scotland because at that point I hadn't been focusing on that. So that was almost like starting again because I didn't have
And was that as
any
represent?
contacts.
Is that when
That
you
was
switched, or was it still as O'Leary?
still as O'Leary PR. And I went to a bank dinner one night, and I got sitting next to this old man, as I thought, but actually who's about my age now when I look back. And we had a great chat about PR, and he was a journalist and had worked for Landward, BBC, really seasoned agricultural PR. Great guy called Ross Muir, everybody knows him. And he was thinking, I want to retire at some point. I don't like this consumer work. And, I'm working on the Royal Highland Show. I'm working for QMS, Quality Meat Scotland. They're looking for more consumer approach. Do you want to come in and we could work together side by side on that? So that was a great dinner, and we went and had a fantastic lunch and uh, decided we were going to get on great and work together. And that was the start of a great relationship with Ross and I. And we worked really successfully. And then when he did retire, I took over the Royal Highland Show independently, but I had been working alongside him for a number of years on that. And that was that was a pre-represent.
Yes.
And that all happened before 2017.
Yeah.
And then in 2017, I was looking again, just really curious as to what was going on in the PR world. And I knew that things were changing. I knew that digital comms was having a big impact. It was coming in. I could see from the London agencies that they were doing things a little differently. SEO had a big part. PR fitted really well into that. And it was one of the tools that people used to really get their search engine optimization working really well. So I headhunted somebody from London, a girl called Hannah Tullock, who is truly amazing. She worked as managing director for an agency in London, and she came up, went to work for Represent, and really transformed our offering. We were the first in Scotland to be an integrated PR and digital communications agency. And that all happened around 2017 when I, bought our office in the centre of Edinburgh, really started to develop digital communications as part of our offering, and then really started to motor. That was the sort of next phase of the development of Represent. And yeah, it was a great name. Came up with a friend of mine when he was driving his tractor, said, I've come up with a great name for your agency. And that was where Represent came from.
So you've been represent since 17,
That's correct.
and then the sale happening now.
The sales happened. It took place on the 29th of August. So big move for me.
Yeah.
And actually, I think in my head, when I moved to Represent, I took away from O'Leary PR. That was probably to create a bit of distance and to start looking at that exit strategy, although I was miles away from it. I mean, you'll know Gregor better than anyone that sort of move to exit happens 10 years before you want to move. So
Yeah.
very much looking at that. And yeah, so this has been a huge move for me. We went through COVID times, and actually we did quite well in COVID. As an agency, we did really well. This sort of agility in how we approach things, and the fact that we were digital, we were able to switch clients to online super, super quick. So we worked on 3 websites during that period. In the first 6 months, we launched 3 websites. We turned some clients that, like Craigie's Farm Shop, we turned them into a digital company. They were delivering groceries online. We really worked with them to save them. There was also lots of funding available at that time. So a lot of really smart companies took that opportunity to switch and really upgrade their digital presence. And we were there to do that. Helped a lot of the schools. So we do a lot of independent schools. So worked with them on their messaging around keeping kids safe, keeping them healthy mentally in during this really tricky time. So we did a lot of opinion pieces. We did a lot of content based around schools and that transition in schools during COVID, which was really exciting times. And one of our favorite clients is William Purvis Funeral Directors. That was an incredible story during COVID because you couldn't go to funerals, you couldn't grieve,
Hmm.
you couldn't attend funerals. It was a really traumatic time. And we were working with William Purvis very, very closely to help them navigate that, to communicate what is possible. A lot of funeral directors just didn't do what William Purvis did. They really took to the extreme, whereas William Purvis did everything they possibly could to make sure loved ones could say goodbye to their families and friends. And that was I think I probably spoke to my client at William Purvis more than anybody else during that COVID time because everything was fast moving. We let journalists in to see how bodies were being prepared, how we were looking after those people who died during COVID, and it was very powerful indeed.
Yeah. Such a hard time, but it sounds like between you, quite good partnership.
Yeah, it was really, really hard times, and everybody was scared. Clients were scared. They didn't know what was ahead of them, and our job was just to have real empathy with them. And I think running my own business, I think when I worked for a big agency, it didn't really matter. I was getting paid at the end of the month. I didn't really have to worry about figures. I had targets, but once I met my targets, I really didn't care what happened beyond that. But when I run my own business and I have salaries to pay, I have real empathy for people who do the same. So when they were saying, like, dude, I'm really scared, I need to make X, we're thinking, right, how do we do this? And it became more of a collaborative piece. So I think the clients that we've got them because we've been through the really, really tough times and we've come out the other side and we've continued to evolve throughout that. But the basis of that was getting ahead of technology way back and staying ahead of it.
And then when you've been doing all that with Represent the last few years,
Yeah.
co-chairing Causeway
Yeah.
as well. So
Yeah.
you balance a bit for balancing act. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, that was actually, that was a labor of love because with Causeway, I found my tribe. It was full of Irish people over here and it was
Yeah.
just great crack. And, you know, it didn't seem like work. It didn't seem difficult. And I was on the board and it was, great. We had great events, Paddy's Day. We had an award ceremony. It was fantastic. And then I thought, yeah, I can be co-chair. That would be a brilliant job. So I had this brilliant, brilliant co-chair called Bridget Worski. And the two of us, very different skills. Bridget is ex-RBS and great on processes and really good on due diligence. I'm not like that. And if I can think of a way around things, and obviously 100% legal, but I will do it and I'll be very agile. So as a team, we work really well. And we had a good time up until probably about a year ago when it became tough. Companies were cutting back, they weren't giving us sponsorship. Scottish and Irish governments, their budgets cut back as well. So we were really running on a shoestring. And again, that required a lot of Bridget and I working really closely together, problem solving all the way, being really clear in our messaging, and realizing when we needed time to look at how else we were going to work as a model because the membership model wasn't working. It just wasn't covering the costs.
And it's all about cross-border
It's
collaboration.
all about cross-border collaboration. It's about, I just thought, when I was setting up O'Leary PR, if I knew a bunch of people that could help me find a good lawyer, a good accountant, could introduce me to people, I would have grown so much quicker. And I didn't. And I had to go to so many events to meet and kiss so many frogs before I got anywhere. Whereas this was a network where people just wanted you to thrive. They wanted you to work and they wanted to help you. And I've never met a networking organization that did that to the core, really.
Was your co-chair during, was it after the Brexit? I would think it would be, if it's
Yeah,
3 years.
yeah.
So how did that impact business between?
We became more important, I
Yes,
suppose.
yeah.
I mean, it did become more difficult, and it still is quite difficult to do that. But Causeway became even more valuable to those organizations. So um, we were able to point them to in the right direction. We could introduce them to the Consul General. We could introduce them to the right people at Scottish Enterprise, Enterprise Ireland. Our network was so powerful, and it was literally a phone call and we could do it. And we did it with an open heart. And we had some great collaborations with some great companies that have gone on. And in fact, I then launched a Dublin office on the back of that, because I thought, hey, I'd like a bit of this. This is great, and when I did that, it was fantastic because people were just like, "Do come and use my office," or "This is the bank to speak to," or "This is how you need to go around registering a company." And it was such a much more simple process because I had that connection.
Yeah, I think what certainly hearing coming across strongly is how important networking
Yeah.
is in business in general, and how you've used that as a foundation. It's being at the right table at the right time when you met the chap that helps you with the Royal Highland Show, Russ, and the importance of going through. And this is obviously how we've met as well,
Yeah.
through that. But that, as you're growing, you're talking about recruiting the person from down south who
Hannah,
came
yeah.
to help you. How difficult has it been to get the right type of talent in Scotland? And if you're also setting up an office in Dublin, what challenges have you had there? What could you share with others that have, what are your good and bad experiences with taking on people?
Yeah, I mean, I think there is no magic answer. I think you need to trust your gut, but you also need to balance that with just making sure they've got the right skills. And a lot of people say you can teach skills. My view is anybody I brought into an office, because we were really small, so anybody I was bringing in needed to add value straight away. So they needed to have something that I didn't have already. And either that was a sector skill that I didn't have, or it was a knowledge of a new tech or new um, something that I didn't know. And that's what Hannah brought in absolute spades. And I think now looking back, and I have been sort of, because I've got the benefit of hindsight now that I've sold the business, who have been the most successful staff members. It's absolute loyalty. It's absolute having a shared purpose because they understand the reason for it. So I think being, as a leader, I'm very transparent. You know, guys, we need to bring in X by the end of the month. This is why. Or, we talk about, what are our frogs today? What are our worries? Has anyone got anything that they really are struggling to fix? It's that whole collaboration piece. But for that, you need somebody who's willing to be vulnerable. So I think when I'm looking for staff, yeah, their skills have got to be absolute right. They need to be bringing something in. Their mindset needs to be collaborative, open. And I think that's so important, open to be vulnerable, so that there are no surprises. I don't want any surprises. I don't want a client ringing me and telling me something I don't know. I want to hear it from you first, and we need to fix it. And that's really important. And from that needs to come that they trust that you will help them. You're not, everybody makes mistakes. So they need to trust that you're going to not kick off. You're going to say, right, how are we going to sort this? And I'd say, right, nobody's died. Let's just think about how we can fix this. And that's really been my approach. So best staff, I can count 5 people off the top of my head who would have walked up through hot coals for me, and I would do the same for them.
It counts for a lot, and I think it's if you have that sort of open, transparent environment, then people will probably add more value,
Yeah.
and you won't get the surprises, and that teamwork's probably going to be there. So through that time, did you find that you're doing the represent work, you're working with the team there, you're doing the Causeway work, cheering there? Then in terms of collaboration or learnings, you were finding that you'd be involved with one aspect with Causeway and you could take that to represent?
Yeah.
Or did you separate them a lot of the time?
No, I didn't. And in fact, we went on to work on Causeway as a client for a little bit. So it just was totally seamless. And I don't tend to compartmentalize because I think life isn't like that, is it? And
Can't silo, can you?
no, you can't. And I didn't feel the need because for me, we were all trying to do the same thing. We were all trying to grow. We were all trying to help each other. We were all trying to introduce everybody to everybody. So when I had client dues, I got all my clients together. When, we had 2 or 3 times a year when the whole load of the clients would come together. And I think that's quite unusual because people say, well, why would you do that? What if they started chatting? And I thought, well, that's absolutely what I want them to do. And the interesting bit was they went on and did things together without us because they didn't need us. It wasn't a comms piece. It might have been a business piece or it might have been something else. And that brought complete joy to me because that showed that I was bringing like-minded people together. And I actually can quite honestly say I was fond of every single one of our clients, and I wanted them to succeed. And they did. And also, I think the best things somebody ever said about me is, yeah, you've got great comm skills, but you're a businesswoman through and through. So you can read a spreadsheet, you can understand financial pressures, you can see beyond the comms in a silo because we're not in silos. And, that is something I've had to learn.
So we've mentioned the Royal Highland Show.
Yes.
You've said some standout campaigns
Yes.
in the past. I'm interested to hear what maybe your favourite one was. But I'd also, before you get into that, there was a story in the William Purvis,
Oh, yeah.
which we hopefully can share here.
Yes.
It was during the Queen's funeral when the hearse was moving from
Yes.
Aberdeenshire
Yeah.
down. Share if you are able to share a
Yeah.
bit with that. But that was an interesting PR uh, thing that you had to deal with.
Yeah, so issues never come at the right time, do they? So I had decided that I was going to take a bit of sabbatical and I was going to go to Ireland for 3 weeks. And I was driving from Northern Ireland down to Southern Ireland, and there was updates on the news, coming from Balmoral, and I was thinking this does not sound good. And I rang the office and I said, guys, I don't think this is going well. I think we could have an issue here. And we knew that William Purvis were the funeral directors to the Queen at that point. And of course, they were in their silos working away, not really knowing what was going on because they weren't listening to the radio live, whereas I was getting it all the time. And sure enough, the story broke and things started to gain momentum. And I was working in Ireland. Funny enough, the Queen's funeral didn't take up a lot of airtime there. So I was desperate for news as to what was going on. But quite quickly, it became apparent that we were going to become a bit of the story. So the story was William Purvis had some branding on the Queen's hearse. And the reality is this had been practiced for years and years and years. The Queen was very clear that she didn't want a palace hearse. She wanted to use a hearse like anybody else could hire. And it was a black hearse. In fact, William Purvis hearses and funeral cars are silver. So we kept this particularly one for her. Um, and we had two of those. And it was, coming down the road, and we started to see on social media people commenting about they've branded the coffin, or this is, this is not what we would expect. This is disrespectful. And I was in touch with the client all the time. And, it was really tricky for us because we knew the Queen had approved all this. We knew we hadn't done anything that was not protocol, that hadn't been approved. But the backlash from consumers and the public was so much so that we felt this was needing to be addressed. So again, the client was driving the car, and was Tim Purvis was driving. He doesn't know anything's happening. He's been told to look straight ahead, and his colleague is told to look at this point and don't look elsewhere. They weren't checking their phones. They weren't doing anything. So all of this furore is happening, and they're in this bubble. But they eventually pulled in at Braemar, and that's when we were able to remove the branding. But we had a media storm. And a media storm, were you asked to take this away? Who said you should do it? Did you go against palace protocol? We were really
You
restricted
can't win
as
either
to,
way, almost, could you?
yeah, we couldn't win either way,
Yeah.
but we were also really restricted as to what we could and couldn't say. And it was a complete learning curve. And media were looking for the story beyond the story, obviously, of the
Yeah.
sad passing of of the Queen. So it was one of those sort of media storms that you just had to ride and stick it through. But we did learn a lot. We did learn a lot through that process. But William Purvis has come out stronger from it. It had no reputational damage whatsoever. In fact, a lot of people were very supportive of us throughout, and the company continues to thrive. So, yeah, we're very privileged to be chosen to be um, the Queen's funeral directors. And yeah,
Yeah.
still a badge of honour.
So apart from that incident, any other standout campaigns that really?
Well, I suppose farming for me, as you know, is very close to my heart. So the Highland Show for me was a dream client, and we had it for about 25 years, which was fantastic before I resigned it. And I'll go on to talk about feeling the fear in a minute. But that was, we had some great fun. We took a Highland cow into the departures lounge of Edinburgh Airport. That was amazing. And I remember when we were negotiating, it was for homecoming, the year of homecoming. And, the whole point was actually it was the arrivals. The whole point was when people came into the country, they were just seeing a little cute kid and a huge Highland cow, and they were like, wow, that's amazing. And it was just all very exciting. And it was to promote the Highland Show. But I remember talking to the airport and they're saying, so is this a pet cow? And I said, absolutely. It's just so quiet. And we had plucked it off the hill that morning and brought it down, and
Yeah.
it was a bit moved. And I thought this one is quite small, but actually when you're in a confined space, it's actually very, very big.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was great. We kind of got in, we got in this cow. So that was amazing. Media loved it. We've taken loads of animals onto the tram. So pigs, sheep, goats, hens, donkeys, and a Clydesdale. We've had some real great fun. I
Hmm.
took a sheep into a barber's. We've had some really great fun with animals. That was a great client to have.
Brilliant. And you mentioned there a bit about feel the fear,
Yeah.
and I've been told your mantra's feel the fear and
And
do
do
it
it
anyway.
anyway.
So
Yeah.
how does that tie in? Is that about the open, transparent, and the bold thinking in
Yeah,
terms of comms?
it is. It's about just saying, actually, I'm really scared. And I think this has, this is not comfortable. And that feeling of being uncomfortable is not great. But what do you do? I remember once when I was really, really, really young working for the agency, EuroRSCG, and we had a managing director then. And I remember saying to him, I'm really scared of this client. She's really tough. And he said, don't let fear paralyze you. And that stuck with me. So it's about being brave and just saying, what is the worst that can happen? And it came also from, my mum had just died. I had got this call, come and meet Kimberly Clark in London, got on a flight, after dropping the baby off at my friend's because I didn't have childminders at this point. And I just thought, "Oh, the worst has happened. Let's just go for it and see what happens." And that gave you that inner strength. And then that has kind of followed me throughout my career. And my kids always say, "Oh, you make changes, quite big changes, and you just do it." And I do. So the Highland Show was a client for 25 years. I loved it. I mean, knew every single thing about that client. I knew, I sat as an advisor on the board. I went to board meetings. I just knew everything. But there was a change happening and I just didn't feel comfortable there. And so I resigned it. And I think everybody was like amazed. And I also went public that I resigned it because I wanted to manage the communications around that. And that was a very brave decision. And there have been a few of them. Staff, when you know a staff member is not working out, you just need to be brave. You just need to cut it and say, this is not working for you and for me.
Hmm.
Let's just come to an agreement. And thinking about things and overthinking about them, it it really doesn't achieve anything. You need to have that difficult conversation. You need to make that decision. But from having a comms background, always managing the comms really, really carefully. So the sale for me was a very difficult piece of comms because, I had to say to the client, this is the right time for me. I'm handing you over to an amazing agency. But then they were feeling like I was abandoning them. They were like, "Oh, the timing's not great, dude. It would have been better if we've got some big projects coming up." You know, and it was quite because we have that relationship. It wasn't easy and but I think what I would say as a piece of advice, and this is what this podcast is all about, don't forget the communications as you get caught up in the process of selling. Because actually, that's what people are going to remember. Once you've signed and you've got whatever you've got, have you left well? Have you left strongly? Have you left enhancing your reputation? Or have you been seen to be dropping the balls, not communicating at the right time, going out with the process? So I spoke to some clients prior to selling, prior to signing on the dotted line. And that was about bringing them into, I was always going to do it, but bringing them not into the decision, but explaining to them prior to it happening rather than landing it on. Because if you listen to the lawyers, you sign the deal at 9 o'clock and you start ringing clients at 10 saying, from Monday, I'm not in the picture and here's the new. That's not helpful to the purchaser. It's not great for your relationship and it's really not good for the client. So I think that's important. So, yeah, that's one thing I always think. Where's the comms around this? What's the messaging around this? And what do they want to hear from me now? Not about how I feel, because actually that doesn't really matter.
Yeah. You got to separate them.
Yeah.
And they'd never, in terms of sale, there's never a perfect way or a perfect time. So it's how you do it.
How you do it. And, I have to stop myself because, if somebody says how they're going, I thought, I'm so cross. I think the only people making money out of this are lawyers. Nobody needs to know this. And, what they need to know is I've worked really hard to match right people for your accounts. I am super confident this is really good for you. More resource, da 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 da. These are the things you want to hear.
I was going to ask, because Represent, Judith O'Leary is the face of Represent Comms, but you have got that strong team behind you. And, businesses that are selling need a strong succession plan. So I just heard you saying there you matched the people in your
Yeah.
business to the accounts.
Yeah.
So that they shouldn't feel the pain of you leaving.
No.
And also a brave decision to move away from the Royal Highland Show
Yes.
and be confident that your business could still, they weren't your only client.
No.
You're
They were
agnostic,
They were our biggest client.
biggest client.
So that is the fear.
And you've obviously you've filled that gap.
Yes. Yeah.
And that's just you all over in terms of your drive. So that you're leaving that business, or you've left the business.
Yeah.
So how have you, how have you ensured that the succession plan is there for the company that's purchased you?
Yeah, succession planning is an interesting one, isn't it? Because I actually had a succession plan that didn't work out because the person that I thought would be taking over, and I really seriously thought about employee ownership prior to that.
Yeah.
But their life circumstances changed. So the person I had thought was going to be my successor moved away. And I think as a leader and a business owner, you can make plans, but what happens when you're making plans? Life. So actually, what you need to do is think, oh, that didn't really work out. This is a resignation I didn't see coming. So where do I go now? And what do you do? And you have to be bigger than the individual in the business. So you have to think, right, this would be really bad if they left. So what is my plan B? And actually, what it was that you had lots of good people rather than one good person. So that if somebody left, you had somebody behind that could come in and actually it seemed to be an opportunity for them. So I think the great thing is there's nothing in my business I can't do. So if somebody rings me and says, I've got a crisis, I can do it. If I've got the only thing I can't do is social media posts. I'm really, really bad at it. But everything else I can do. And that's quite empowering. So I think as a leader as well, you need to not come away too far from the tools so that you can actually continue to do it. And that's a balance between, yeah, you're on the business or in the business. But for me, I've always been in the business as a priority, so I can do it.
So in terms of, I've mentioned, we talked about networking a bit
Yeah.
earlier, but just to
Yeah.
delve a bit more into that in terms of how you use that, not only for Represent, but Causeway. And I suppose thinking there when I've just asked you about losing a client,
Yeah.
filling that gap, I suppose you're networking, you've got the confidence, there's always a new client out there. And, how have you leveraged your network over your time in both Represent and Causeway to the benefit of the business or the membership of Causeway, for instance?
Yeah, firstly, I never thought about it and I know you use this word, but using it, I just thought I'm going out, I'm going to have a laugh, I'm going to see who I'm going to meet. It'll be fun. Oh, I'll know somebody in the room. If I don't, it doesn't matter. And I remember that was a really excruciating part when you first started
Mm.
networking. Now I see it as I'm going out. I never consider it as going networking. I'm just, oh, I'm going here, I'm going there. But I ask, I'll say, look, guys, I need some help here. I have just resigned on this account. So I've got 3 months to fill it. Do you know anybody who might be worthwhile introducing? And I think people don't ask.
Yep.
Mum had this great saying, you've got a mouth in your head, use it. And
My aunt
actually,
used to say, if you don't ask, you don't get.
yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we could talk sayings all
Yeah.
day. But, just asking, just having the confidence to say, and this is what I need. And a lot of people don't do that. They just talk around things. And that is, yeah. And, you talk about your elevator pitch and you talk about this. And, I've been to these excruciating things where people just hit you with their elevator pitch. And I think, well, I don't even like you there now because I don't know you and I don't have anything in common with you because actually you've started with your elevator pitch. So I think just being natural, being curious, being interested. And I think that helps. And if people like you, they'll work with you. If they like you, they'll recommend you on. And if they can't help, they'll know somebody who can. But you need to make it easy
I
for
think
them.
what's come across as well is you've just said that you sort of enjoy it. You see us
Yes.
going out. And that's Greg and I feel the
Yeah.
same. We've really enjoyed the last 6 months where we've had to network in very commas, but we've
Be genuine, isn't
be
it?
genuine. Yeah, that's it. And as you say, to ask. So, yeah, it's brilliant.
So I'm just thinking, we've spoken about the sale, but there's just so much going on with comms and marketing at the moment,
Yeah.
isn't it? So I know Represent was integrated,
Yeah.
it's PR, digital, SEO, social. What's your thoughts on just all the technology and the AI movements and everything at the moment? How do you see things changing again over the next couple of years?
So I love AI, I have to say. I think it's amazing. I'm not scared of it at all. I think what it means for clients is that before we were chasing the keywords. So what are the keywords that Google's going to you search for, and how can we, create the content that will make sure your keywords are up there. And we track it. We do it for all our clients. So we're very data driven. So we can tell our clients, look, here are the target keywords that we're searching for. We look after Rosebery Venues, who just do incredible private parties, weddings. I mean, across Barnbougle Castle, soon to be Dalmeny House, incredible venues. And so we would be number one for Scottish castle weddings, Scottish steading weddings. That was what we were chasing. Now we've completely adapted. So what we're looking at is authentic content that's adding real value. We're looking at listicles. We're looking at things that AI can just scan and say, yeah, this is actually useful. This is good content that's not found elsewhere. So it's actually going back to the principles
Hmm.
of storytelling and good writing. And where I struggled with keywords is that you had to put the keywords, you had to have it in you had to have in the first line, you had to have in the second line, you had to think about ways. And almost what the content was secondary to the placement of the keywords. Now it's about how do you create something really useful? So first six things to do when you get engaged, you know, things to do on your wedding day, how to create that perfect personalized wedding, how to brief your photographer, how to, 10 best bridesmaid gifts. All of these things. I mean,
I
it's
mean,
a gift.
this is where you're seeing the transition. Google search engine or search engine, it might be extinct because folk are now using GBT
Yeah,
or
yeah,
all the other sort of AI portals to say, right, I'm organising a wedding.
yeah,
What are the list of things
yeah.
to do? And then you're hoping that not hoping, if you've got the content right, it's finding you that way. So it's interesting.
It's really interesting. And what's that's to go with is about understanding what is your client's objective. So when you go into anything, and I sit in front of our clients, say, in 6 months' time, what do you want to have achieved by us chatting? And it's about, I want more weddings. Right. Okay. And then it's about understanding who is what type of wedding do you want? Do you want self wedding where you go and decorate it, or do you want somebody who comes in with a very lovely credit card and say, here, you go and do everything? It's about understanding the audience. What is it? So there's no point in writing. If you want somebody who comes in and says, here's my credit card, go do everything. I want a theme of gold. That's about the brief. Then you want somebody who's high net worth, who's probably professional busy, who may not even be in this country, who may have an affiliation from the US, who wants to come to Scotland to live, to marry in a big castle. All of those things we need to understand, because then the content we write is not going to be, how do you dress your table setting? Because they're not interested, because they've got people for that. But what they might be interested in is, gifts you can give that are authentically Scottish that you provide.
Yeah.
So it's that twist so understand your objectives, understand your market. You absolutely have to do that. And these are fundamental. You go back to school and that's what you're learning in marketing
Yeah.
school. It hasn't changed. And in fact, it's even more important now.
So, Judith is a leader. I got a question for you. Another one of your sayings, make it amazing,
Yes.
was apparently central to
Yeah.
represent. I'm just wondering, how did you sort of embed that ethos into the culture at represent, and I suppose whatever you're doing after?
Well, it wasn't me. It was Becky who worked for me, who was brilliant, who's gone on to write or work on a very successful copywriting business herself. And her view was make it amazing. She talked about this. And it was really a shorthand. When you're feeding back on copy, because I proofread every single thing that's run out of my agency, so I could see what it was. And I could go back to them and say, yeah, that ticks all the boxes, but it's not amazing. It's not exciting me. And that almost became our shorthand to, that's not excellent. It's good, but it's not excellent.
Mm-hmm.
It's not amazing. I haven't read that and thought, I love that. I want to buy that. I want to go there. I want to learn more about staff safety alarm systems, because actually they're really important to me. It, if you're not excited about it, your reader's not going to be excited about it. If your copy's not amazing, it's not going to be brilliant. If you're pitching to a journalist and this is the pitch, I'm not excited about it. A journalist who gets 70 or 80 pitches a day is certainly not going to be excited about it. So it almost became a shorthand to being amazing. And they always they knew if they got amazing, it's like a gold star in school. Do you remember the gold star in
Yeah.
schools?
I never got many.
I got lots of red ones, but I don't get many silver or gold, but it was like the gold star. And we had this bell, if somebody's got it amazing, got a piece of coverage, we had this old fashioned school bell, and we used to all ring it, and everybody look up and say, why? Well, I've just got this pitch. The Times has taken this pitch on staff safety alarm system. And way, that's great, and that was the excitement. But amazing, it's on our notice board at work. People know what we're trying to achieve when we say that.
Yep.
So now the company's sold. I'm thinking back to being a leader and how you cope with the team and yourself in the day to day. That's really hard when you're in the midst of selling a business and you're still involved with running the business. So how do you deal with that as a leader, with the emotional impact and working through each day? Is it stage by stage?
Yeah, I find that really hard. I think because we're so transparent, and when you're at the early stages of selling, you're having conversations and it may not go anywhere. And it's not helpful to tell the team, I'm actually having a chat about maybe selling, because that is introducing uncertainty at a really early stage. That's not helpful to them. But I find that the most difficult part. I really, really did. More so than the clients, because the clients are going to be fine. They're going to be looked after. We've got plans in place. They've been signed off. They've got the same team on it, but they've actually got more people on it. They're going to be grand. It's my staff. We talk about being honest, transparent. And I felt not being those things. So I really struggled with that a lot. And I think the most difficult conversation was having it with the team. Um, yeah, a lot of the work was done at night. You're having to dig out pieces of paper, contracts, you're having to pull figures together. You can't do that with the team. Even meetings was tricky, because we have open meetings, and, I was having to take half days to go and see lawyers and things like that. I find it really, really tricky. It's been, yeah, selling a business is not easy. Emotionally, it's not easy, because it's if you've never done it before. And I think you kind of get the money men and you get the lawyers, but they don't get the nuances. Um, and sometimes you can get too caught up in the nuances, and you do need someone to say, look, this is not important, just move on. And so that is the balance, isn't it? It's the balance. But if you run your business on relationships, on loosely friendship, because it is. I mean, I would say I'm friends with my team, and I will be their mentor for years to come. I had lunch with my old PA who I made redundant during COVID on Friday. We see each other every 6 months. You know, it's about they are friends, and sometimes you have to do things that you don't like to do. But if you know it's the right thing for them, and I think that was the easiest thing for me, I worked really hard on the negotiation at the detriment to myself to make sure the team got the package they deserve and they could see that it was a positive step for them.
Yeah. It's hard. It's not easy, I guess, is the round up from that.
No, and I think if I could help somebody going through the process of selling again, I think I would just ask the people to get a team around them where you have not just the professions who are a necessary evil, and I say this with respect to any lawyers listening. They go through the process. They aren't really there to counsel you or to help you or just to check in to say, have you thought about X and Y? I think comms is crucial to any sale, and I think it's overlooked. And especially if you're somebody selling a business with an internal comms team, they can't be involved in that process. Therefore, you, and it may not be your skill set, are having to navigate that. And as somebody who has a skill set of comms, and that's what I've done all my life, I found that difficult. I found I was writing emails to clients, which would be timed to go out on the Friday morning after the sale, having spoken to them, and I was rewriting them and rewriting them because they were changing and changing and changing. That's okay because that's almost second nature to me, but somebody else it's not. So when you're pulling your team around, don't forget to have somebody who's been through it before, because I think that's so important, but somebody who has got that comms background, who can help you with your messaging, who can help you with the timing of it, who can challenge the lawyers to say, no, actually, it's not okay that we ring them on the day that we've sold. We have to go outside the process in some instances.
I think it's important, and I think having someone you can pick up the phone and support and
Yeah.
trust
Yeah.
is important as well.
Yeah. So with Represent sold, the Causeway role is concluded.
Yes.
What's next for Judith and
So I'm not
in the future?
stopping.
Yeah.
I would like to. I would like to continue working in comms because I'm so passionate about it.
Mhm.
And yeah, the last 6 months have been tough. I've kind of gotten away from the fun bit, and I want to reignite that again. So I want to find, business who's going through a period of change or has got some crisis or just needs someone to come in and help them. Either freelance basis, I can do that. And that was part of the negotiation with my purchaser that, yeah, I won't set up another agency. Wild horses wouldn't take me down that route. But I will work freelance for people who have got a project that needs somebody in short, sharp, can get their sleeves rolled up, can provide a bit of clarity and move away once they're stronger and better. And that's really what I want to do. I actually am a nurse, really.
Yes. There you go.
And you care.
And I think from Lynx's perspective, we're hoping you'll collaborate with us
I'd
on a
love
few
to.
projects, and this is what we're looking to do in the future.
Yeah, that'd be great.
So it's been fantastic hearing your journey, and yeah, you'll be an asset to MD that takes you on in the
Thanks,
future with the
Andy.
knowledge you've built up. And we feel your pain having gone through your exit,
Yeah.
and I know how close you were to your team
Yeah.
and how what it meant to you. So yeah. So we're coming to a section, I should say now, called Off the Cuff, which is really quick fire questions.
Okay.
Gregor's going to kick off, so don't think too much.
I won't.
Just rapid fire answers, but you can say more than one word if you want.
Okay.
And so Gregor's going to kick off.
Lead off, okay. Late or fashionably early?
Fashionably early, without a doubt.
Yes, proven today.
Yes.
Very good. What's your best habit and your worst habit?
Oh, Craig, best habit. I'm incredibly loyal.
Mm-hmm.
Worst habit.
You're incredibly low.
Worst habit is cross it. I have a red line, and actually, there's probably no going back.
Yep.
That's not great. I find that a poor habit, but I really find it hard to forgive once that loyalty has been broken.
Interesting. Next one, if you could take a day out of the week and replace it with a second Saturday, what day goes?
Oh, Monday.
My favourite answer. So you can answer this from Represent or from Judith
Yeah.
Leary, whatever you want. If Judith or Represent were a band, what genre would you be?
I'd be Motown. Definitely.
Like it.
Motown, yeah. I want to be that cool, laid back. I'm not, but I'd love it to be.
If you played the music, it would give the impression.
Yeah, true.
And think about the chat we've just had,
Yeah.
and for where you're going next. What's it you love most about business?
The people, just the people, you know, especially SMEs. SMEs are the unsung heroes of this country. You know, we're the ones that took the risk, you know, had the sleepless nights, made masses of sacrifices for our for our families, and you know, employed people, set them on their way. You know, I have so many young people who are actually doing better than me. I remember one great story about, we had an au pair and she was with us when she was 16. And she said, "Oh, what do you do?" I said, "Oh, I work in PR." And she said, "Oh, I'm going to do that." And I went, "Yeah, yeah, good." So, "Yeah, I'm going to do it in fashion though." I went, "Yeah, great. Yeah." And now she is head of PR for Celine.
Yeah.
And I can't even afford a bag. So these people,
It's
you
who
know,
you
that
know,
I
Judith.
started have gone on to be amazing. And that's the best bit.
What would you say your superpower in the workplace is or has been?
My drive. I'll always have drive. And, you know, and that is been the tough bit over the last 6 months. Sometimes you feel your energy dipping because actually you're in the weeds of what contract with your IT provider do you have? And I really don't care, but I have had to care and
Yeah.
I find that tricky.
Good.
If you could outsource one daily task forever, what would you go for?
Oh gosh. Well, I have outsourced it. It's finance. I trust my accountant Rory with my life, and you know, it's even more so during this process. You know, he is the one that has my back on everything, and the only we're not massively compatible because he overcomplicates things. So I said, just tell me the answer. But yeah, finance. Money, finance doesn't excite me, and that's not great. As a business owner, but as long as I know there's money in the bank and I can cover everything I need to cover, and I've got some slack in there, I can I can live with that.
What's the one word your team would have used or used to describe you?
Uh, Uh, well, to describe me, I don't know. But the saying I use quite a lot is "you're a star." And actually, I remember once when I was leaving the old agency, they made a T-shirt and it said "you're a star" on it, and that's probably it.
Yeah. Good.
So be an interesting answer. Perfection or just good enough?
Just good enough, without a doubt.
Yeah.
Interesting. Good. Zoom call or in person?
In person,
It's important sometimes, isn't it?
just pick up the phone. You know, I've said this to my team all the time. If you send me another email, I will lose the will. If you're going to be sending a client an email, have everything on that email. If there's loads of things to sign off, add a Dropbox links. You need to just be respectful of other people's time pressures. Just because you need something signed off, they might be dealing with something you have no idea about. So pick up the phone if it's going to be a point that you're letting a journalist down and you're not going to get the coverage. Otherwise, be really respectful of their time. Be organized so that you're easy to work with. Because there's nothing worse than somebody who's disorganized then putting pressure on you.
Mm-hmm. Good. Want to go to the final?
Yeah, I think last one we've probably covered this, so it might be favourite rather than best piece, but what's the best piece of advice you've been given?
I think it's the fear one. Don't let fear paralyze you. And I think that's it. So just do it. You know, it's like sometimes you feel you're falling off a building and you don't know where you're going to land or who's going to catch you, but somebody will.
Just keep moving.
Keep moving. Yeah.
Brilliant. Well, that's us come to the end of the From Me To podcast. Just like to thank you for joining us. It was fantastic to hear about your career and where you're going in the future.
Very,
Really
very
true.
So thanks a lot.
It's been a pleasure. Thanks a
Enjoyed the
million,
chat.
guys. Thank
Thanks.
you.